Hi everyone. In today's tutorial we're going to do another dormer. If you want to follow along, you can download a project file where I've already put the reference image in the front view so we can get started right away. In this one I will start with a disk. I'm going to put that to -Z, hit NH on the keyboard to switch to wireframe mode. Let's reduce the disk segments to 1, and I also need to move the reference image down to about here. So let's scale this disk up until we reach this corner here, so something like this. And I want the shape to look fairly smooth, so I'm going to increase the rotation segments to 72. And now we need to turn this into an elliptical shape. And I'll do that using an FFT deformer, which you can find in here. And I'm holding down Shift with the disk selected, and if I click on the FFT deformer, it will automatically be made a child of the disk, and it will also fit to the disk. And we don't need to make any changes to the FFT deformer, we can use it as it is. So let's go to point mode, select all of the points of the FFT deformer, and I'm just going to scale them on the y-axis to about here. And then we can use current state to object, select all the polygons and use extrude inner. Like so. And let's delete all the polygons at the center. These two polygon rings here will eventually become the window frame, but I'm not going to split them off right away because the geometry will still change. Next I'm going to select all the edges on the outside and extrude them to about here, and let's extrude again to about here. And we can grab all of these polygons here and delete them. As a matter of fact, we can delete half of the object, and let's optimize it. Over here I'm going to move this point over a little bit, and maybe let's move this point up to about here, and I'm going to make a cut like this and then just move this point over to about here, and I'm going to select these polygons here and delete them and optimize the object. In order to create this shape here, I'm going to use a spline. Let's deselect everything and grab the spline pen tool. I'll switch it to Bezier, and I'll also switch on snapping because I want to snap it to this point. Let's just grab that disk. I'll just move this point over a little bit further. And I'm going to create my first point, snapping it to this point on the disk. And I'll create another one maybe about here. I'll add one down here, over here, and let's see, maybe up here, down here, and let's add another one here. And I'm going to select all the points and then adjust the tangents to get the shape that I want. Also, using the move tool, I'm going to double click on this point here, and I'll make sure the tangents are straight by setting the y-axis to 0. We could do the same thing, this point for the x-axis, and for this point on the y-axis. But both of these numbers are at 0, so we don't need to change anything here. So let's select all the points again, grab the pen tool, and start tweaking this a little bit more. And this is looking pretty good except for this area here. Maybe I'll just move this point over a little bit and then just adjust the tangents again. So something like this looks good. And what I'll do with the spline is I'll put it in an extrude object. So with the spline selected, hold down Alt and add the extrude object. I'll just change the depth a little bit. And I'll set the spline intermediate points to uniform, and let's maybe change that to 10 to make it nice and smooth. Actually 8 doesn't look so bad. Let's try 8. I'll make a copy of this extrude object, and I'm going to put my original objects, the disk with the FFT deformer and the extrude object, into a null object. And this is my backup. Let's go ahead and hide this. I'm going to make this editable. And then I'll select these edges here and extrude them. And we need to change the angle to -90 degrees. Bring down the offset a little bit to about here. And maybe I'll make this just a little bigger, so these points down here almost meet. Let's see how this looks when we render it. It's almost a bit much. I'll just change that back to what I originally had. So something like this. And now we can select the edges here at the back, delete them, and I'm going to select both of these objects and use connect objects and delete to combine them. And actually the resolution on this could be a little higher. I'll just undo that, delete the extrude, and use my backup. I think I will change that spline to a slightly higher resolution. Let's try 10 points maybe and convert this. Extrude with the same settings as before. Let's have a look. And this does look a little bit smoother. Again, I'm going to delete the edges at the back. Let's make a backup of this as well. And I'll just combine these two. And up here I'm just going to weld these 2 points. And next I'm going to fill in the gaps here. And what I'll do is I'll use the polygon pen and just bridge these edges like so. And we also need to move this one over to create that corner. And maybe we need to move this point over as well, because otherwise it's going to look pretty bad because we're changing that curve. And something like this should be fine. Let's keep this as a quad. And I'll create a triangle here, because if I just connect the edges or create polygons in between, you can see we're getting more and more distortion of the geometry, and I don't really want that. So wherever I think it's necessary or helpful, I'll create a triangle, and later I'm going to create additional edges and then use the HB even distribution script from the HB modeling bundle to even out the geometry again. Let's see. I'll try not to create too many additional edges. You could also keep the triangles if you wanted to. And I think we'll need another one here. So next I'll select these edges here and I'll connect them, and then I can connect these points and dissolve this edge, and we will get quads doing that. So I'll do this for all of the areas. First of all, I'm going to connect all the edges. And then I'll connect the points. And I think we need additional edges here. And now we can dissolve these edges here. Just dissolve these ones. And next what I'll do is I'll select these edges here, and I'll use the HB even distribution script. Select these edges and do the same thing. And I'm going to select these ones and run that script again. And the problem is we're still getting a lot of distortion here. What we could try and do is just select more edges, and that helps a little bit. But we're getting some distortion on the outside. It's not that bad, but maybe what we could do to change that is, with these edges selected, I'm going to extrude without an angle. And I'll just extrude these out a little bit, like so. And then I can select these edges here and just delete them, and then select these edges and extrude them again. Let's see, let's undo that. I'll try and get close to that point up here. So something like this is fine, and then we can dissolve these edges again. We still got some distortion in this area. What we could do is just delete these polygons. And connect these ones. So that is looking a little bit better. And I'll just get rid of this triangle by connecting these edges, connecting these points, dissolving this edge. And I'm running that script again, and that's looking good. Now over here, we need to weld these points. And then let's just move this one over. And I think that's looking okay. Not perfect, but Again, try and run that even distribution script to make this a little bit smoother. Something like this maybe. And we also have this circular area here, and we could use a disk to create that. Let's put that to -z. We don't need any disk segments. I'm just going to move it over to here and scale it down. Scale it up again a little bit, like so. And I need to change the rotation segments for the disk, and in order to find out how many segments I need, I'm going to select these edges here, and you can see we have 39 edges, so we need 39 segments for the disk. And I'll just scale this down a little bit further to about here maybe. And I'll connect these two objects. And let's see if we can stitch and sew these together. Yeah, that's not gonna work. No, so I guess we'll just have to do it the hard way, which is by welding the points. And I'll just select some of these edges and move them over a little bit, just to make welding the points a little bit easier. And we're getting quite a bit of distortion again. But it's not too bad actually. I think I will weld these 2 points. And we're getting another triangle here. I think I'll just connect these edges, connect these points, dissolve this edge. Close that hole here. And I'll select, let's select all of these edges here and run the even distribution script. And that's looking okay, I think. And maybe we could select these polygons and rotate them a little bit, something like this. And next I'm going to extrude these edges down a little bit and scale them to 0. And I'll extrude these down again. And I'll extrude them over. And let's go to model mode. We need to change the object axis here and move it to 0 on the x-axis. And now we can move this edge over to 0 as well. And I'll make a cut here and then create a polygon like so. And I'll extrude this edge over to here, ring select these edges and connect them, select this edge loop, maybe move this up a little bit and extrude this edge over to about here, and I'll extrude these edges down and this one over. And let's go ahead and bevel this point. I'm going to switch on limit, increase the offset a little bit, and I'll add a couple of subdivisions. Let's do 5. Also switch on corner n-gons, and then I'll just select these polygons and melt them into a single polygon. And I don't want the edges of these points coming down here to this point, because this will be a windowsill, whatever it is. In any case, it's going to be some sort of ledge, and we need to be careful where we put the edges, because eventually I want to bevel this object, and when we have a ton of edges meeting in a single point, that's going to be a problem. So what I'll do is, first of all, I'll make a cut over here and dissolve this edge, and I'll make a cut from this point to here, and then we can make a cut here and another one like this, and let's select this n-gon and remove it. And I'll just move these edges down and then scale them to 0. And we can use close polygon hole to close this gap here. And I'll remove the n-gon. And then I'm going to fix the geometry. We need to change the flow of the edges down here as well, because this is going to be a ledge as well, and we don't want all of these edges meeting over here. So what I'll do is I'll make a couple of cuts. Yeah, I think 2 should be enough. And now we can get rid of these edges here. And I'll make another cut from this point straight across. And now we can select all of these points and weld them to the center. So we still have a ton of edges meeting in the same point, but they're at a distance from the edge that we want to bevel. And we can get rid of this edge by dissolving it. We can also get rid of these edges here. So that's fixing the area down here. And up here I will change the geometry a little bit and get rid of the triangles here. Again, that is something that you don't really need to do. We're going to have triangles on this object anyway. I'm not going to remove everything, but most of them. So let's see, we need another edge loop here, here and here, and over here we need 2 more. So let's put one here and one here. I'm also going to count them. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And the reason I'm counting them is because right now the distribution of the geometry is not even, and I'm going to run that script later, but the problem is we don't have enough geometry up here to get an even distribution. We could just try and run the distribution script on the edges down here only. I can't seem to be able to select this edge down here for some reason, not sure why. So maybe I should optimize the object first. And that did remove a couple of points, so maybe now I can select these more easily. So if I run this script, we're getting an even distribution down here, but not up there. So I think I'll just add those additional edge loops up there. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. First of all, I'm going to fix the geometry down here. So I'm going to connect these points. So I just added 2 more edge loops, which means that up here I'm going to select 10 edge rings. So that's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I'll just connect these. And now, hopefully, when I run that script, I get a pretty even distribution of the edges here. And down here, I'm just going to run that script on these edges here. Maybe only on these edges. And on these edges up here. And I do like that a lot better. So I think we have everything that we need now, and we can start extruding the geometry. And I'm going to start down here by selecting these polygons. And I'll just extrude these forward a little bit. Again, bearing in mind that I do want to add bevels. So I'll make this maybe 6 centimeters, so we have a little room to add the bevels that we want. And then I'm just going to select the polygons down here and extrude those out a little bit. I'll do maybe 10. And let's move these points back in, like so. also going to weld some points here, and down here we can get rid of all of these edges. So next I'm going to select all the edges on the outside, and it looks like I need to get rid of this polygon here first, and while we're at it, let's also delete the ones at the center. I don't think we have any up here, and I'll optimize just in case. Let's go back to edge mode, and it looks like we have a point here that we don't need. So now we should be able to select all the edges here. And extrude them back a bit. Let's do 80 centimeters or so. I'll also switch on ambient occlusion. And I'm not going to change the geometry anymore, so we could also split off these polygons, which will be the window frame. Just hide these for now. And this is our stone frame. I'm going to delete these polygons from the stone frame and optimize the object again. And I'll extrude these edges back and snap them to here. And now we can extrude the rest of the shape. So that's all the polygons we need. Let's extrude these back a bit. Let's do maybe -10. See how that looks. That's a bit much. -8 looks a bit better. I think I'll reduce this even more to just -6 maybe. And I think that looks fine. Let's delete these polygons here at the center. Optimize the object. And up here, I'm going to extrude these ones forward a bit. Maybe 9 or 10. Let's see how that looks. I think that's fine. Let's put this in a symmetry object. Up here, I'll just weld these points, and then I'll connect these edges and move this point back a little bit, and we can now select all of these edges and dissolve them. And I think we could also try and even out the geometry here a little bit and maybe get a nicer looking curve, especially up here. Let's see how that looks when we render it. It actually looks okay, but I guess we could at least try and run that script. It's not doing anything. Why not? Let's try with these edges. Well, it's working here. I'll just deselect everything and optimize. Looks like nothing has changed. But something's wrong because we're selecting this edge here and we really shouldn't. I'll just delete that. And close that polygon hole. And it seems we still have an issue somewhere, because closing the polygon hole is not working properly either. And we have 2 points here. I'll just weld these and then close that polygon hole. And now we should be able to select these edges and even those out a little bit. And I'm getting that same issue here. I'll just delete this edge. I must have screwed something up along the way. Let's just create a polygon here. And try again. So that's looking fine. Down here we could select these points and weld them. And let's get rid of this edge. Connect these two. Move this point back. Again, that's creating quads here. And then we can select this edge loop and delete all these edges. Now, holding down the Shift key, I'm going to add a bevel deformer. I'm going to use an angle. And let's increase the size a little bit. 2.8 is a bit much. Let's try 2. 2 is still a bit much. Let's bring this down to 1.4, 1.5. And let's see how that looks. So I think that's pretty nice, except here at the center we have a bit of an issue. I'll just increase the tolerance of the symmetry object and the problem goes away. And of course we're getting nice bevels on these corners here, and the reason is because we moved those edges away from the edge that we want to bevel. If I move these down, you can see that's creating a mess, and that's why I changed the geometry down here, so we don't get that mess when we bevel the edges. So let's create the window frame. And what I'll do with this is I'll just select these edges and extrude them back a bit. And we could snap them to the back of the stone frame. Most of this frame will not be seen because we have the glass in there. Well, actually, no, let's not snap it to the back. We can make it pretty deep though. And then I'm going to select these polygons, extrude them back a bit. I'll do -7. Select this polygon and this polygon down here, delete those. Ring select these ones, delete them, optimize the object, select these edges and extrude those back. And I will snap these to the back here. Let's put this in a symmetry object. And I'll move this back a little bit to here maybe. So this is the window frame, and this is the stone frame. And if you want to, you can make the symmetry objects editable. I'll just keep them. And the last thing we need is the glass. For this I'm going to use a simple cube, and I'll change the depth to maybe 4 centimeters. And let's move this back. To about here. And we can pretty much keep the width, I think, but we need to increase the size on the y-axis. And it's penetrating the geometry of the stone frame, so I'll just scale this down to about here. And we can also decrease the width a little bit. I'll just put a white material on the glass and the stone frame. And there we go, that's our finished dormer number 3. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. Thanks for watching everyone, and I'll see you again soon.